All right, Clean Freaks, my name is Hank Balch. You're listening to episode 11, I believe, of Hank versus the Robot. And we're going to be talking to Sterile Simon today about predictive staffing in sterile processing. This is not a new concept. It's been batted around outside of our industry for many years, and there's been some players in the space that have been trying to get at predictive staffing in SPD, but we're going to hash out what that actually means, what the model is, what kind of technology and data you need to do it right, and the implications it could have for your SPD. Obviously, we're going to talk about, is there any kind of consumer AI tools that can help me do that right now with the data that I have, with the staff that I have? So we'll hash all that out in today's episode. But without further ado, let's welcome our guest today, Sterile Simon. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Hank. It's great to be back, and I'm excited to dive into predictive staffing. This is such a timely and important topic for sterile processing departments. The idea of using data and AI to not only plan staffing, but also respond to shifting demands is a game changer for efficiency and morale. Let's unpack what this could mean for SPDs everywhere and how folks can start leveraging these concepts with tools they already have. Let's get into it.
Yeah, in a lot of our conversations at Beyond Clean, we're giving insight, we're talking about new tech, we're talking about new standards that are coming out there. But at the end of the day, you can know what you need to do, you can have the tools that you need to do, but if you don't have the people there that you need to do it, it ain't getting done. So staffing is almost always, if not the top priority, it's the top 3 priority. You got to have the people to get sterile processing to where it needs to be. And so this staffing piece is there, but then the predictive staffing is trying to solve for, hey, if we've got limited staffing resources, which almost all of us do around SPD today, then you want to make sure you've got those people there when you need them there, doing what you need them to do. And I've got a little slice of that, another angle of that I want to talk about a little bit later in the show. But let's just start high level. Outline and define what predictive staffing means. What do people mean when they say that?
Great setup, Hank. At its core, predictive staffing is about using data and analytics to anticipate the staffing needs of your department before they become a crisis. Instead of reacting to understaffing or overstaffing in the moment, you're leveraging historical trends, workload patterns, and even real-time data to proactively align your team's availability with the demand. For sterile processing, predictive staffing means understanding when your department is busiest based on factors like surgical schedules, case volume trends, loaner tray arrivals, and equipment turnover. By analyzing this data, you can predict, for example, that Tuesdays after a long weekend tend to have higher tray volumes, or that certain types of surgeries always result in longer reprocessing times. With this insight, you can schedule staff more strategically, ensuring you've got enough people during those peak periods and avoiding burnout by keeping things balanced during slower times. It's not just about how many people you have on the floor, but also which skills they bring. And predictive staffing models can help ensure you've got the right mix of experience, like senior techs for complex tray assembly or additional runners for peak OR hours. The goal is to maximize efficiency and quality while minimizing stress and inefficiencies. In other industries, this has been powered by AI and advanced scheduling software. But for SPD, the same principles can apply with the data we already have. Surgical case schedules, tracking system reports, and even seasonal trends are gold mines for building predictive models. It's about translating that data into actionable staffing plans so you're ready for whatever comes through the door.
Yeah, that skill mix was exactly where I wanted to go. I'm going to hold off on it, though. It's going to take a lot of willpower, but I'm going to hold off on it at least for one more question here, because I know once I get in there, we'll probably spend the rest of the time talking about the skills mix part of this predictive staffing. However, before we get there, one of the big consulting opportunities out there when we're out there looking at sterile processing departments, and we're often called in because they feel like they're short-staffed, and usually they are short-staffed in some various ways. But almost always when we start looking at the data and the workflow, we start realizing you've got staff here and their hours are being counted towards your productivity numbers, but there's actually not that much processing to do at the times that they're there. And so like if you were to overlay their schedule with the amount of work to be done, you've got all these extra hours on different edges of your schedule that are not as productive time. And then you got this like window of anywhere from 12 o'clock till kind of 6 o'clock when almost all of the processing, right, like 80% of your processing is getting done in that 6 hour window, but then you're staffed 24/7, and there's just not as much that needs to be done during those times, or for various reasons, you can't get as much done during those times. So this predictive staffing model kind of comes in and says, okay, do we have our people in the department on the clock when the work is there to do? And is our process optimized to allow them to come in, clock in, and get right to work? Or are we wasting our man hours in areas that are just not that productive? What are your thoughts around that in the context of our conversation today?
Hank, you're hitting on a huge inefficiency that so many SPDs face. Predictive staffing isn't just about having enough people, it's about having them when and where they're needed most. That misalignment you mentioned, where staff hours don't match workload demand, is one of the most fixable yet overlooked problems in sterile processing. When you overlay staffing schedules with actual processing data, like tray volumes, surgical schedules, and reprocessing turnaround times, you often see exactly what you described: big gaps in productivity. You might have techs on the clock during slow hours, or worse, you've got your peak workload smashing into an understaffed shift. Predictive staffing models help eliminate these inefficiencies by focusing on aligning people with the workload, not just filling a shift. For example, if 80% of your processing happens between noon and 6, a predictive model might recommend pulling resources from those slower early morning or overnight hours and reallocating them to that critical window. Maybe you have fewer techs on the clock overnight, focusing just on equipment prep or light cleaning, and ramp up during midday when trays are flooding in. It's not about reducing headcount, it's about making every hour count. This also ties directly into morale and burnout. If techs clock in and spend hours looking busy during slow times, they feel undervalued. Then when peak demand hits, they're scrambling, stressed, and more prone to errors. By matching staff availability to workload, you not only boost productivity, but also create a smoother, more predictable work environment. People come in, get to work immediately, and leave feeling like their time was well spent. The beauty of predictive staffing is that it turns this analysis into an ongoing, data-driven process. Instead of guessing where to make adjustments, you let the data tell the story. When is the work coming in? What's the volume? And how can we optimize schedules to meet that demand without wasting time or resources? It's efficiency, morale, and quality all wrapped into one smarter system.
Yeah, Simon, that data piece, anytime that we talked about sterile processing data over the last 5 to 10 years, almost inevitably, one of the first conversation points is, yeah, but our data is dirty or incomplete in sterile processing. There's all these gaps. And so because of that, we can't just take our standard sterile processing data and do a big download and then upload it all somewhere and expect the numbers to make sense. If it's priorities, if it's workflow volumes, etc. There's all kinds of inventory that's maybe in our tracking system that hasn't been seen for 3 years. There's data that's in our tracking system that maybe doesn't have a count sheet. And so it shows there's 0 instruments in this tray, but there's actually 120 instruments in this tray. It's just never been cataloged and input into the tracking system. And again and again and again, there's work that's done in the department that's not scanned into the tracking system. And so it looks like this person has not been productive, but they just haven't scanned, either because there's no scan for the activity that they do, or maybe they forgot or whatnot. So there's all these opportunities for the data gaps. And then when you get into this predictive staffing model that's built on data, and it's assuming that you're making decisions on good data, you hit this kind of impasse that I think has slowed down this technology to where, hey, if we do this and we try to apply this, you're going to have all kinds of wonky numbers and schedules that are not really aligned with what you're seeing on the front end. And that's where we have been historically, to just rely on good, competent lead techs and managers and supervisors of SPD to say, hey, I know when it's busy. I know Thursday is always busy because that's when Dr. So-and-so does his revision cases. And so we're going to staff accordingly. But that's not scalable. It's highly dependent on the individual to be competent. And I'm sure there's other in that list of things, right? But it just it doesn't always work, I guess. So we've got to go to a model eventually that drives efficiency in the way way that this predictive staffing model does, but we need a lot more work on the data piece. That's a long diatribe without a question. Maybe the question is, what kind of data do we need to make good staffing decisions, and how do we ensure that data is as clean as possible?
Hank, you've nailed the crux of the issue. Dirty or incomplete data is a massive roadblock in implementing predictive staffing. You're right. Historically, we've leaned on the instincts and experience of lead techs and managers. And while that can work to a degree, it's inconsistent, unscalable, and prone to human error. To truly leverage predictive staffing, we've got to clean up the data and focus on collecting what matters most. Let's break it down. First, what data do we need? At its core, predictive staffing relies on three main types of information. One, workload data. This includes tray counts, instrument volumes, and processing times. It's not just about how much work is coming through the door, but also when it's happening. The more granular, the better, like hourly or even half-hourly breakdowns. Two, staffing data. This covers schedules, productivity metrics, and even skill levels. You need to know who's working, what tasks they're assigned, and how efficiently they're performing. Three, contextual data, surgical case schedules, seasonal trends, and even OR delays. These external factors directly impact SPD workloads and help predict surges or lulls. Now, how do we clean the data? It starts with identifying and fixing the gaps. One, audit your tracking system. Go tray by tray to ensure everything is cataloged accurately. That includes count sheets, instrument inventories, and activity logs. Yes, it's tedious, but once it's done, maintaining accuracy becomes much easier. Two, standardized scanning practices. If there's work being done that isn't scanned, create workflows to capture it. Whether it's cleaning, pre-sorting, or non-tray items, every task needs a documented step to ensure the data reflects reality. Three, set up validation checks. Use reports to identify anomalies like trays with 0 instruments or users with no recorded activity. Regularly reviewing these flags helps you catch errors before they skew the numbers. Four, close the feedback loop. Teach your team why accurate data matters. When techs understand that scanning impacts staffing decisions and ultimately their workload, they're more likely to comply with the process. Finally, how do we make decisions with imperfect data? Let's face it, no system is flawless, but AI can work around some gaps by finding patterns in the chaos. For example, even if your tracking data isn't perfect, AI can analyze trends like case volumes by day of the week or average processing times for specific trays. Pair that with feedback from lead techs, and you've got a hybrid model, leveraging human experience to validate and refine AI-driven insights. The transition won't be perfect, but even small improvements in data accuracy can have a big impact. Clean data isn't just a goal, it's the foundation for unlocking the full potential of predictive staffing. And once you have that, you're not just reacting to the chaos, you're staying ahead of it.
I love that comment about identifying those anomalies early on before it gets kind of baked into the data. That's great, yeah, because if you could quickly identify, maybe even through AI, that hey, Johnny's been on the clock for 8 hours, but Johnny's only scanned like 4 things. That's probably not right. Let's allocate and identify what Johnny's been doing, and then make sure that we get that that productivity value, or we capture that activity somehow in this data, so that we're not skewing things. I think that's a really interesting model. I'm curious if any current tech does that, because I know that's one of the frustrating things for a leader too, is you spend all this money implementing a tracking system and you're dependent upon the data, but there's all these areas that the data can go askew, and it can be hard sometimes as one individual to look at it all and say, yeah, like that's an anomaly, or maybe that's not right. But if you had it kind of surfaced and categorized, and even recommendations around, hey, Juliet was like 3 times as productive tonight, that's probably not the case either. Let's take a look at that and see what happened and make some adjustments to make sure that we're keeping our data as clean as possible. I love that insight. Okay, let's move on here to that skills mix conversation that we kind of preempted a little bit at the beginning of this conversation. This is one of my favorite topics in all of staffing. And it's this idea, well, it's the assumption number one in our industry that everyone should be cross-trained. That is the status quo. If you're hired into a sterile processing department, the typical training is you're trained to do everything. From decontam to sterilization, you're trained to do every kind of tray, every kind of scope. And that's for a good reason. There's a lot of upside to being cross-trained. But with that cross-training, inevitably, it decreases our opportunity and our ability to specialize at a rapid pace and to specialize in a way that's scalable across the department, but then also scalable across the industry in various categories that we may want to specialize in. It also hurts us when we're looking to pay, to be competitive in compensation, because then everyone's kind of treated in a kind of a cookie cutter fashion, like one tech is as good as another tech because they're all cross trained and they all know what to do. There's not a lot of leverage there that you would have with more specialization. All that being said, any good sterile processing leader knows when you're sitting down to make your schedule, and you got 30 staff, how you divide and assign that 30 staff is going to impact the output of the night. Those individual staff members produce at different levels, both qualitatively and quantitatively, depending on where you put them. Some are quicker in decontam and safer. Some are quicker at the sterilization stage. Some are more thorough at the assembly stage if they're processing heart instruments or orthopedic instruments. Some are the ones you want on those ENT trays. Historically, it's been really hard to use any kind of staffing, analytics, or predictive staffing to get us the right skill set based on that surgery schedule and the day that's in front of us. Who is called in sick? Who's working today? What are my resources? What are my resources' skill sets? And then how can I most effectively assign them today in my department to get the highest output at the highest quality level and work in some kind of model to continue training those that are lower in their productivity and quality, give them exposure so that I'm not consistently stuck in this model where everyone's at the same level but no one's improving. Talk me through how predictive staffing and AI can help me to solve that problem.
Hank, you're speaking to the heart of a major challenge in sterile processing, balancing the immediate need for productivity with the long-term goal of growth and specialization. This is where predictive staffing and AI could completely transform how we manage skills and assignments. Let's break it down. First, AI can categorize and quantify skill sets. Imagine a system that tracks not only which staff members are cross-trained, but also their performance in each area. For example, if Sally consistently assembles heart trays faster and with fewer errors than anyone else, that becomes part of her skill profile. Meanwhile, Johnny might shine in decontam or sterilizer loading, but struggle with complex tray assembly. Over time, this data creates a skills matrix, a living, breathing document that doesn't just say who's been trained, but how well they perform in specific tasks. Second, predictive staffing can pair skills with daily needs. Let's say you've got a big surgical schedule with complex ortho and ENT cases. The AI analyzes the caseload, cross-references your skills matrix, and suggests an optimized schedule. It might say, Sally should focus on heart trays, Johnny should handle decontam and sterilizer operations, Juliet, who's newer, should work on ENT trays under supervision. This ensures the right people are in the right places to maximize quality and efficiency. Third, AI can help balance productivity and training. One of the hardest things as a leader is giving newer or slower techs the exposure they need without compromising quality or output. An AI-driven model can look at the schedule and recommend where it's safe to assign less experienced staff for growth opportunities while still meeting department productivity goals. Fourth, real-time adaptability. If someone calls in sick, the AI doesn't just leave you scrambling. It can rerun the schedule, reassign tasks based on available staff and their skill sets, and even suggest adjustments like pulling in extra support for critical areas. This dynamic flexibility means you're always working with the best possible configuration, even when things change last minute. Finally, predictive analytics can highlight training opportunities. By tracking trends over time, the AI might flag that certain staff consistently struggle with particular tray types or workflows. This insight allows you to target training efforts, creating focused development plans that elevate individual skills while addressing department-wide gaps. The specialization piece you mentioned is also huge. Cross-training is valuable, but hyper-specialization in certain areas, whether it's robotics, ortho, or high-risk scopes, can create a level of expertise that drives both quality and efficiency. AI can help you identify who's best suited to specialize based on their performance trends and interests, then structure assignments and training to support that specialization without leaving other areas under-resourced. In short, predictive staffing powered by AI isn't just about filling slots on a schedule. It's about building a smarter, more adaptable workforce. It ensures every shift is optimized for output and quality, while also laying the foundation for growth, specialization, and a more competitive, sustainable SPD. It's the kind of tool that could take sterile processing to the next level, not just operationally, but culturally, by making every tech's unique strengths and growth areas a central part of the strategy.
Yeah, Simon, I love that. It's getting at, again, the core challenges of the department leader to staff appropriately, to staff with wisdom. It's also getting at that opportunity for all of our technicians, not just new technicians, to increase their skill set over time, to either become more productive in general, to become more qualitative in general, or to specialize and say, hey, I want to get more productive on my orthopedic trays, or I want to do a better job decontaminating my ENT trays. All of that dynamic can be tracked through these kind of programs, and then we can start to surface, hey, what impact I've done 3 in-services over the ENT trays over the last 12 months. Has it had any impact on our productivity levels?
Hank, exactly. That's the kind of insight that takes sterile processing to the next level, not just operating in survival mode, but thriving through intentional strategy and growth. With predictive staffing and AI-driven tools, you're creating a virtuous cycle. Track, train, measure, and improve. When you start collecting and analyzing that type of data, you can quantify the impact of targeted interventions. For example, if you've had a tech focusing on ENT trays for the past year, you can evaluate their productivity and quality metrics over time. Are they assembling faster? Are error rates dropping? Are surgical delays decreasing because trays are being processed more efficiently? AI can take those data points and show you trends, helping you understand whether your training efforts are moving the needle or if you need to pivot. This kind of granular tracking also allows you to benchmark progress department-wide. Maybe focusing on ENT trays for one tech doesn't just improve their performance, but also positively influences others who've been exposed to their expertise. It could highlight where to invest more resources or where your efforts aren't yielding the expected ROI. And then there's the cultural piece, which I think is just as important. When staff see their growth and contributions recognized through clear data, like showing that their specialization improved productivity or reduced errors, it creates buy-in and motivation. They're no longer just cogs in a machine. They see how their work directly impacts the department's success. With tools like this, SPD leaders don't have to rely on gut instincts or anecdotal evidence. Instead, you're working from a foundation of actionable insights. It's like putting the science behind the art of leadership, allowing you to make smarter decisions, invest in the right people, and track the real-world outcomes of those investments. That's the kind of leadership that elevates not just the department, but the entire profession.
All right, well, Simon, that's going to do it for today's episode. I really appreciate you coming back on the show today. I think on the next episode, I'm going to turn our attention to personalizing this data piece. We've talked about staffing at the predictive level department-wide, but I kind of want to take another look at the personal implications, the individual implications around data in sterile processing. We did a similar interview of this back a number of episodes. I think it was Seamus Johnson who joined us for this, and we just talked about it briefly, a couple of minutes on that show. But we're going to dive in to this idea of what can sterile processing data do for you as the individual technician to differentiate you when you're looking for that next promotion or that next job. Because right now, if you look at the average sterile processing resume, it's mainly an argument of credentials, certification, and experience. Those don't tell me anything about how productive this person is, how quality their trays are, any impact whatsoever they individually bring to the sterile processing teams that they've been a part of. It tells me that they can go to school. It tells me they can pass a certification exam. It tells me that they can at least not get fired, depending on how long they've stayed at a particular facility. But their resumes don't really tell me a lot else beside that. I think there's a lot more that the average sterile processing professional. Because we have access to data and because we have access to AI tools now, I think you can integrate your personal productivity data, quality data, impact data into your resume to tell a much more powerful story, both just at the technician level, but definitely as you go up the chain into that leadership level. If you're looking for your first manager job, if you're looking for your first director job, if you're trying to get into consulting, your resume should be filled up with numbers that are personalized to what you individually have contributed. So I'm going to pick Simon's brain on the next episode to talk through that. But that's going to do it for this episode of Hank versus the Robot. Hope you like the show as much as I do. I'm having a blast. I think you can probably tell that. If you got any comments or recommendations, I am watching the comment section on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Let me know what you want to hear, what you don't want to hear any more of, what you think I should change. I'll change anything I can if it's helping that listener experience, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing it for. I want you to know how to fight dirty better. That's what it's all about. And until we see you again soon, like we tell you each and every week here at Beyond Clean, keep fighting dirty.